My name is Allison Parker. I'm 31 years old, and tonight my older brother stood on my porch in Franklin, Ohio, looked me dead in the eye and said, "You're on your own." He handed back the empty casserole dish I'd given him after Mom's funeral and stepped around me like I was a stranger begging outside a grocery store. Inside my pocket, my phone was still open on the banking app, the screen glowing against my leg with a number that would make most people choke. $50 million. I won the lottery. I told no one. I asked my family for help because I wanted to see who truly loved me. And now, under the yellow porch light, with November wind scraping the trees bare, I realized I had my answer. Only half of it, anyway. Because 3 minutes after my brother's car pulled away, I got a text that made my mouth go dry. We know about the money. Hey, before I keep going, tell me in the comments which city you're watching from. I'm curious where this story finds you tonight. The morning I found out I'd won, I was still in scrubs from an overnight shift at the assisted living center. I'd bought the ticket out of habit. One of those, why not? What else can go wrong? Gestures life squeezes out of you when you're bone tired and the break room coffee tastes like burnt hope. I scratched the numbers on the couch with the TV murmuring about storms. Matching each one felt like stepping onto invisible stairs. By the last number, my hands shook so hard, I had to press them under my thighs to keep from dropping the ticket. I didn't scream. I didn't even smile. I just stared at the window, at the reflection of a woman who looked too tired to be a millionaire. Then I made a decision. Tell no one. Not my brother Leonard, not my aunt, not the cousins who never showed up unless there was food and a camera, not even my best friend Cassie, at least not yet. Because love is loud when you have something. I wanted to know who loved me when I had nothing. Mom's cancer bills had hollowed our family out like termites. Leonard had a better job, a house in a neighborhood with fresh mulch and flags on holidays, but he'd kept his wallet zipped in the name of discipline. I was the one setting alarms for her meds, the one warming the ginger tea at 2 a.m., the one bartering with billing departments like it was a flea market. When she died, I carried her eulogy folded in my pocket for a week because I couldn't stop talking to her in my head. That same week, I claimed the lottery anonymously through a trust an attorney helped me build, buried the winnings behind a bank veil, and went back to work. Then, I set my experiment in motion. I called Leonard. I told him my hours had been cut. I told him my rent was late and the landlord was understanding in the way a snake is patient. Could he help me with $600 for 2 weeks just to keep me from falling behind? A pause, a throat clear. Al, that's not a good habit to start. You've got to learn to live within your means. He sent me a link to a budgeting podcast. I said thank you and hung up, looking at the silent phone like it had betrayed me too. Next, I tried Aunt Dell. She'd always said, family first, and I wanted to believe her. I told her I needed help with Mom's last medical bill, $412. She sighed, heavy and theatrical. Sweetheart, we all have bills. She suggested I sell my car, the one Mom and I used for doctor's visits, the one with the little dent from the time Mom laughed so hard at a road sign that I drifted into a trash can. I said thank you, again. I always say thank you. People tell themselves they're kind if you let them. I asked Cassie last because I hoped she'd be different. We'd shared a dorm room 10 years ago. We knew each other's passwords and secrets, the petty loves and the big regrets. I'm tapped out until Friday, she said, but her voice was warm, troubled. Come over, you can sleep on my couch if you need. That offer burned in me like a candle in a dark church. I told her I'd be okay. I needed to see the shape of everyone's heart before I ended the experiment. The first clue that something was wrong beyond stinginess, arrived 2 days later tucked under my welcome mat. A white envelope, no return address. Inside, a photocopy of the trust document I thought was locked in my attorney's encrypted portal. The black bar over my name had been peeled away with forensic neatness. Someone had circled the trust beneficiary, me, and scrawled in red, Tell them or we will. I stood very still, listening to the refrigerator hum and the slow drip in the bathroom I'd been meaning to fix. My skin prickled. How? I'd used a law firm 3 towns over. I'd never logged in on my home Wi-Fi. I'd taken notes by hand and burned them in a dollar store grill on the patio, watching ash spiral like moths. Someone had gotten close. Uncomfortably close. That night, I placed a sticky note over my laptop's camera and did a slow walk through my house. Baseboards, windows, the smoke detector I'd replaced last month, the thermostat. I unscrewed it and found nothing. In the kitchen, the light above the stove flickered faintly. I pulled the globe and saw a speck, black and rounded, with a pinhole, a camera, a cheap one, but a camera, the kind anyone could order and stick in a light fixture. My stomach turned over so hard. I had to brace my hands on the counter. Whoever left the envelope had also been watching me. I called the only person who could look at a situation like this and not panic. My cousin Jonah, the family's handyman with a past that smelled like bail receipts. If anyone knew about shady tech, it was Jonah. He came by with a duffel bag and a boyish grin. "Relax, cuz," he said, climbing a step stool. "People put these in Airbnbs all the time." He plucked the thing out, weighed it, popped the SD card, and slipped it into his pocket. "I'll check what's on it." He swiveled, surveying the room in a way that made me uneasy. "You got coffee?" I watched him over the rim of a chipped mug, something cold blooming behind my ribs. Jonah had always been adjacent to trouble. Harmless trouble, we all said. Harmless because we loved him. Harmless because the cops at our barbecue called him Jay and ruffled his hair when he was 19 and surly. Harmless because we needed people to be harmless so we could sleep at night. He left with a hug and a promise to text. He never texted. The next day, a coworker pulled me aside at the assisted living center. "Do you know your brother posted about you?" she asked, pity flat in her eyes. She showed me a Facebook post on her phone. Leonard had written a sermon-length lecture about enabling and personal responsibility that didn't name me, but did. The comments were a potluck of self-righteousness. "Tough love," someone typed. "Broke people have broke habits," another added. I felt like I was reading my autopsy in advance. That night, around 11:30, my doorbell rang. I peeked through the peephole. Cassie. Her hair in a messy bun, sweatshirt sleeves pulled over her hands, eyes worried. I opened the door and she stepped in fast, like she'd outrun her own decision. "Okay, you're scaring me. Are you okay?" I almost told her everything then, but the envelope tugged at the back of my mind like a child pulling a sleeve. "I'm fine," I said too quickly. Her eyes scanned the room, then landed on the light fixture above the stove. I watched her watch it, and my chest tightened. "They're watching you," she whispered, like she'd read my thoughts. "Al, what did you do?" What did I do? I wanted to laugh. I worked. I took care of Mom. I bought a lottery ticket. I did not say I won. I did not say I planned to show every single person exactly who they were and then vanish like smoke. Cassie bit her lip. "Leonard called me. He said if I heard anything about an inheritance, he said you're acting secretive." He made air quotes and rolled his eyes. "I told him to mind his business. But Al, if there's something..." I stared past her, into the living room where Mom's crocheted throw still slumped on the arm of the couch, like a sleeping cat. A month ago, Leonard wouldn't lend $600. Now he was sniffing around for inheritance. The experiment had moved from observation to contamination. I felt anger flare, bright and steady. I didn't start this fire, but I could decide how it burned. The second clue came from the bank. I'd set up alerts for every movement. A login attempt pinged my phone at 2:14 a.m., then another at 2:16, then a third from an IP address somewhere 20 miles away. I called the bank's fraud department and listened to a woman with a smooth voice assure me the trust's multi-factor authentication had held. "You're safe," she said. I thanked her and hung up. not reassured. Safety is a story we tell ourselves between incidents. I called Jonah again, straight to voicemail. I texted, "Need that SD card." No response. At lunch, I drove by his apartment. His truck was there, his curtains drawn. I knocked. His neighbor opened their door a crack. "You looking for Jay?" she said. "He left early, with your brother." My scalp prickled. I walked back to my car slowly, the way you walk out of a church after a funeral, like noise would be disrespectful to the truth in front of you. Leonard and Jonah, together. The envelope, the camera, the IP attempts. A shape was forming in the fog. I just didn't know its size yet. When I got home, there was a second envelope. Same plain white, same block letters. Inside, photos. Grainy, but clear enough of me at the law office parking lot, me at the bank, me shredding paper in my backyard. A note. Sell the house, bring $200K cash to the old skating rink lot on Saturday, or we tell everyone. There was no signature. There didn't need to be. The lot was a place we all knew from childhood, a once bright circle scabbed over with weeds and graffiti where our parents used to drop us on Fridays with pizza money and a curfew. Whoever wrote this wanted me scared, wanted me to run on command. Instead, I sat very still and felt the anger I'd been rationing break its seal. They had chosen the wrong girl. They had mistaken kindness for weakness and privacy for guilt. I was finished testing. It was time to grade. Revenge, I've learned, isn't screaming in someone's face. It's not even slamming a door. Real revenge is architectural. You draft it. You measure twice, and you build it with the same care you'd build a home you plan to live in for years. Because you are going to live in it, long after the thrill fades. So I started drawing. I called the law office and asked for a copy of every access log related to my trust. The paralegal put me on hold, then returned with a brightness that felt scripted. "Of course, Miss Parker. We'll email shortly." I asked for the IP histories, too. Another hold. "We typically don't share that, but given your concerns, we can provide a summary." I hung up and wrote their names down anyway. People who stall are telling you where the bodies are buried. I went to the hardware store and bought 2 small nanny cams, the same cheap model someone had stuck in my stove light. I installed one in the hallway facing my front door and one in the living room tucked inside Mom's old porcelain lamp. I set motion alerts to silent. I opened my laptop and drafted 2 emails. The first looked like a confession. I can't keep this in anymore. The trust has $50 million. I'm scared and I need advice. The second looked like despair. Fine, I'll sell the house. I'll bring the cash. I addressed the first one to myself, then accidentally forwarded it to the family group chat that never responded when I needed rides for Mom, but did when someone posted a photo of ribs. I addressed the second to the burner email listed on the ransom note, a string of numbers that looked like a password, not a person. I hit send on both. Then I sat back and watched. Within 5 minutes, the family chat exploded. An aunt who hadn't called me in 5 years wrote, "Proud of you, baby. God is good. Call me ASAP." A cousin texted separately, "Need help with down payment, just $10K. The hypocrisy would have been funny if it weren't so efficient. Leonard didn't text. He called. I let it go to voicemail. He called again. Third time, I answered. "Ow," he said, breathless, like he'd run from the driveway to the kitchen. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, voice flat as a plate. "Don't play dumb," his voice dropped. $50 million? Are you insane? Do you know what people will do to you? "Seems like I'm learning," I said. "Anything else?" He exhaled hard. "Come to my house. Now, we need to talk." His words were a command wrapped in concern. The old Leonard, the one from childhood who rode bikes with me and told ghost stories on the porch, flickered behind the syllables. But the new Leonard, the one who'd called me a burden under his breath when he thought I was out of earshot, stood in front, blocking the door. "I'm busy," I said. "Tell me what you wanted to tell me." Silence. Then, "People are saying things. Jonah heard." From where? I asked lightly. From my stove light? Click. He hung up. That night I slept for 3 hours and dreamed I was running in a cul-de-sac that never ended. When I woke, the motion alert from the living room flickered on my phone. 4:07 a.m. Front door. I scrubbed sleep from my eyes and tapped the video tile. The screen showed my dark living room. Then the door eased open like a stage curtain. A figure in black slipped inside. Tall, careful. The camera caught the side of his face as he passed. Jonah. He didn't turn on any lights. He moved like someone who'd practiced. He went straight to the bookshelf, to the third shelf, to the ledger where I kept Mom's recipes. He pulled the ledger down and flipped it over. There, on the cardboard backing, I'd taped an empty manila envelope. He peeled the envelope off, felt it, empty, and swore under his breath. My phone in my hand, my breath in my throat, I watched my cousin search my house like a stranger. He scanned the room, then set a small device under the couch near the leg. A bug. He left as quietly as he'd come. I sat on the edge of my bed, cold from the inside out, and let the facts arrange themselves. Someone close had installed the camera. Someone with keys or lock skills had entered my house. Someone knew about the trust. And the ransom drop. Saturday, old skating rink lot. I smile without humor. Perfect. Public, wide open, lots of sight lines. And I had 2 days. I spent Friday turning my house into a stage. I moved furniture in the living room to give the lamp camera a clean frame. I printed copies of the ransom note and slid one under the rug in the hallway. Just enough corner peeking out to tempt a boot. I set a cheap decoy envelope stuffed with grocery circulars inside the recipe ledger. I placed a second decoy under the couch exactly where Jonah had planted the bug. A little gift for curious fingers. I texted Leonard 3 words. We'll talk Saturday. He didn't reply. But at 10:13 p.m., the camera caught someone standing on the sidewalk across the street, hood up, hands in pockets, just looking, watching. The shadow stayed 20 minutes, then melted into the night. Saturday dawned brittle and pale. I wore jeans, old sneakers, a black hoodie that swallowed me whole, and a baseball cap tugged low. I used cash to buy a disposable phone at a gas station, peeled it from its plastic like a bandage, and loaded it with one number, the burner from the ransom note. Then I drove to the old skating rink lot and parked where the cracked asphalt gave way to crabgrass. A few early dog walkers looped the perimeter. The rink building itself sat like a crouched animal, windows boarded, one side spray-painted with a profane mural no one had bothered to buff out. I set my decoy duffel weighted with old textbooks on my passenger floor and waited. Heartbeat steady in the quiet way that's half fear, half focus, my disposable phone buzzed. A text. Walk to the back entrance. Alone. I typed back, I'm watching you too. Another buzz. Do it. I got out, locked my car, and walked slow around the building, letting my soles crunch gravel, letting any eyes know I wasn't hurrying for them. Behind the rink, the chain-link fence sagged like a tired spine. A man waited in the shadow of a busted light pole, hoodie up. He lifted his chin in the universal sign for here. My mouth went dry, but my hands were steady. I walked up, duffel over my shoulder, and stopped 3 feet away. Put it down, he said. His voice was familiar in a way that made my skin crawl. He reached to pull his hood back. And that's when a second figure stepped out from behind the dumpster, blocking my retreat. The first one tugged the hood down. It was Leonard. Leonard tugged his hood down, and the smirk on his face nearly knocked the air out of me. Surprised? He asked, his voice calm, like he wasn't standing in the middle of a broken-down lot at midnight trying to extort his own sister. Behind me, Jonah stepped closer, his boots crunching on gravel. I could feel the wall of his body at my back, boxing me in. You really thought you could keep 50 million hidden? Leonard sneered. You couldn't even keep a job without crying about rent. I forced my face blank. I don't know what you're talking about. He laughed, sharp and ugly. Don't play dumb. We saw the trust papers. We know everything. And you? He jabbed a finger at me. You owe us. Jonah chimed in, his tone oily. This doesn't have to be a problem. Just give us $200,000 tonight. Cash. That's all we're asking. Tonight? My laugh came out brittle. And what about tomorrow? 1 million? 5? Until I'm bled dry? Leonard's eyes gleamed. It's not like that. This is about family. Family deserves a cut. That word, family, stung like acid. They'd all shown me exactly what family meant when I needed them. Now they wanted to redefine it because I had money. Before I could respond, footsteps echoed from across the lot. A figure moved into the dim light. My chest squeezed when I recognized her. Allison? Cassie! For a split second, relief bloomed in me. My best friend. Maybe she'd followed me. Maybe she'd save me. But then I saw the way her eyes darted toward Leonard. They shared a look. Quiet. Telling. My stomach dropped. Cassie, I whispered, what are you doing here? She hesitated. They told me you weren't thinking straight, that you needed help. Leonard laid a hand on her shoulder, casual, like it belonged there. She's been looking out for you, Al, more than you know. The world tilted under my feet. My own best friend, the one person I trusted more than anyone, had betrayed me. Why? My voice cracked, the question ripping out of me. Cassie's expression twisted, shame warring with defiance. Because you shut me out, Al. You didn't trust me with the truth. Do you know how that feels? To be treated like a stranger while you sit on money that could change everything for us? My throat tightened, but I let tears slip down my cheeks. Let them think I was broken. Let them think they'd won. You're right, I said softly. I didn't trust you, and now I know why. Leonard stepped closer, satisfaction written all over him. Good, then here's the deal. Tomorrow night, you bring the real money to my house. No more games. Or everyone finds out what you've been hiding. I swallowed hard, forcing my voice to tremble. Fine, no games. He grinned. Smart girl. They left me standing under that flickering pole light, Cassie's guilty stare searing into me before she climbed into Leonard's car. Their taillights disappeared into the night, leaving me with the sound of my heartbeat and the weight of betrayal. I stood there for a long time, staring at the cracked asphalt until a strange calm settled over me. Not fear, not despair. Clarity. They thought they had cornered me, but they didn't realize I'd already laid the trap. Back home, I didn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table with Mom's crochet blanket around my shoulders and wrote. Names, dates, everything. I uploaded the recording from the skating rink to a hidden cloud drive, scheduled it to auto-send if I didn't check in. Insurance. Then I started building my revenge. I printed copies of the ransom notes and slid them into an envelope for my lawyer, marked open if anything happens to me. I tested the tiny nanny cam I'd stitched into my jacket. Live feed. My attorney would be watching when I walked into Leonard's house. I didn't text Cassie. I wanted her to stew in silence, wondering if I'd forgive her, wondering how much I knew. Because the next night, Leonard's perfect suburban house would become my stage, and every mask they'd worn would be ripped off. The following evening, I parked down the street, heart pounding steady. Leonard's porch light glowed like a spotlight, his American flag snapping in the breeze, the picture of respectability. He opened the door before I even knocked. "Come in, sis." His voice dripped with false warmth. Inside, the smell of pot roast clashed with the sour tang of greed. Jonah sprawled on the couch, a beer in his hand. Cassie perched on the armrest, arms crossed, eyes avoiding mine. My hand brushed the tiny nanny cam hidden in my jacket, already recording, already streaming. I set the duffel bag on the coffee table and unzipped it just enough for the stacks of staged cash to show. Leonard's eyes lit up like a gambler's. See? That wasn't so hard. I leaned back, crossing my arms. Before you take it, I want you to say something. He frowned. What? That you blackmailed me, that you threatened me. Out loud. Jonah barked a laugh. She's bluffing. But Leonard's pride wouldn't let it go. He leaned in, face close to mine. Fine. You want it on record? You're damn right we threatened you. You think you can sit on $50 million while your family suffers? You owe us. Every cent. The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. Even Cassie looked stunned at how easily he'd admitted it. And that's when I smiled, because every word was already streaming to the cloud, to my lawyer, to the fail-safes I'd set. Leonard had just hung himself with his own tongue. Leonard didn't blink when the audio of his own threat filled his living room. He pivoted like he'd trained for it. The TV was a mirror telling the truth, and he was still trying to comb his hair in the reflection. "Turn it off," he said, the nice neighbor tone stitched tight across his voice. "You're upsetting my wife." He doesn't have a wife. He just likes how the sentence makes him sound safe. "Leave it on," I said, and walked to the window. I tugged the curtains wide. Cold night air slipped through the pane's seams and brushed my cheeks. Across the cul-de-sac, 3 front doors cracked open. Porch lights clicked on like eyes. Mrs. Han wrapped a shawl tight and stayed on her step. The Lawson kid stopped bouncing his basketball and just held it against his ribs. Mr. Reed pretended to take a long time untangling his dog's leash. Ohio theater. I grew up here. I know the choreography. The recording kept playing. My voice calm, his proud. Jonah's oily chuckle, Cassie's small noises, every syllable flattening into evidence. "You want to embarrass me?" Leonard murmured, teeth together while his lips kept smiling. He turned his back to the window and faced me like we were at a wedding reception and someone had told an off-color joke. "Al, be reasonable." "Reasonable?" I let the words sit between us and sour. "You invited me here to extort me." He flinched, just the eyes, then the mask again. "That's a serious accusation." "It's not an accusation, it's a recording." Jonah rose, setting his beer on the table with a click that sounded like a door latching. "You love big words, Al. Extortion, evidence. You don't have the spine to—" "Say another word and you'll answer the next one in a booking room," I said quietly. I didn't raise my voice. I made it small and sharp. Knives don't shout. Cassie stood, arms still folded, the sweatshirt sleeves hiding her hands. She kept glancing at the TV like it might forgive her. When our eyes met, she looked away first. Headlights washed the wall. A patrol car slid to a stop. A second followed. I didn't look away from Leonard until the doorbell rang. He moved to answer like a man accepting a sympathy casserole. "Officers," he said smoothly, ushering them into the warm light and pot roast smell. "So sorry for the noise." The toller officer scanned the room with the kind of gaze that's seen every kind of living room and knows the difference between a family argument and something that is about to make paperwork. His eyes paused on the TV long enough to hear my brother's voice confess. Then he looked at me. "Ma'am, I asked you to come," I said, stepping into the doorway where the sound carried. "I'm safe. I want you to witness what's being said and stay while I retrieve my belongings." "Understood." His partner took a position just inside the threshold, casual and unmovable. Leonard tried his speech again. "This is a private matter." "Then you shouldn't have made it public," I said, lifting my chin toward the open window and our neighbor's careful tableau. He closed the curtains with fast fingers. "There, better." "Not for you," I said. The taller officer nodded at the TV. "Whose voice is that?" Leonard smiled, like a man about to sell a car. "Hard to say. Audio can be manipulated." The recording answered, clear and smooth. You're damn right we threatened you. You owe us. Every cent. The officer's jaw moved once, a muscle along the ear line. We'll take statements. Jonah rolled his eyes. Cops love paperwork. Paperwork loves criminals, I said. Cassie finally spoke, voice threadbare. Al, can we talk in the kitchen? Just us? I kept my eyes on Leonard. Right here is fine. My phone buzzed in my jacket. A text from my lawyer popped across the lock screen. We're live. Do not close the window on your end. I'm recording everything. I tapped twice in my pocket to confirm. The house speakers dipped a fraction, then another voice layered onto the air, crisp and disembodied. Good evening, officers. David Klein, counsel for Miss Parker. You're hearing an authenticated recording streamed to a secure drive. We will produce the original device and metadata. We also have video of a covert entry into Miss Parker's residence at 4:07 a.m., which we will provide. Who's that? The shorter officer asked. Her lawyer. Leonard said, lips close to teeth. In my living room. In your felony, I corrected. The taller officer's gaze shifted to Jonah. Sir, if we find evidence of a covert camera or listening device in Miss Parker's residence, that's a separate charge. Never seen her house, Jonah said, and swallowed at the same time. His throat clicked. Tiny tells. I collect them like stamps. I stepped backward, opened the front door all the way, and let the night in. A chilly draft ran a finger down the back of my neck. 2 more neighbors materialized, one with a phone face down but tilted enough to catch audio. Cassie's shoulders went up and stayed there. Leonard's jaw nodded. You called the whole block, he said. No, I said. You did, when you chose this room and that voice and thought it would stay between people who shared a last name. A car rolled past slow. Someone's wind chimes decided they had something to say. You want to humiliate me? He asked under his breath. After everything I did for this family? I posted a Facebook sermon on tough love and sent me a budgeting podcast when I asked for $600. You did that. He blinked hard and turned to the officers. I'm prepared to file a complaint for defamation if she posts this. Defamation requires a lie. I don't have to post it. The cul-de-sac is hearing it live. Enough, the taller officer said mildly. Not to me. To him. He turned to me. Miss Parker, what do you need to collect? Just that bag. I pointed to the duffel of fake cash and trackers, and the phone I placed behind the TV stand. Leonard moved too quickly, like a man lunging for something dropping from a balcony. He scooped the duffel, hugged it to his chest, and backed up. The officer didn't touch him. He didn't have to. He just looked at the bag, then at Leonard's hands, then at me. The look said, go ahead, make him say it. That's mine, Leonard said. Then keep it. Open it later, alone. The taller officer's mouth twitched. Jonas snorted, and then seemed to remember he had a neck. Cassie exhaled a sound that wasn't quite a laugh or a sob. Leonard, stop. She flinched. I felt it like a draft. There's a moment in every exposure when the room tilts, not because of what's said, but because the person who needs the mask most forgets which version of himself he's wearing. Leonard got there when Mr. Reed across the street said, not loudly but clearly enough, Are you okay in there, Allison? My brother's head snapped toward the window like a tether got jerked. He dropped the nice neighbor face and let something mean and naked look out. You want the truth? He said, and his voice changed. She didn't want help. She wanted a test. She wanted to play God. She sat on money while Mom died. The sound in my chest wasn't a gasp. It was something older, like a string breaking on a violin that's been tuned too long. I stepped forward until we were breath close. I sat in oncology waiting rooms while you went to tea times. I watched Mom nap in a chair because she didn't want to lie down and look like a patient while you texted the HOA about trash cans. Don't you dare rewrite that part. He went still again. Not the calm kind, the kind that presages flailing. He swung to the officers and to the invisible jury of our neighbors and started telling a new story, fast and sloppy. It's a reflex some men have when truth corners them. He's unstable, he said. He's always been. Stop, I said. He exaggerates. Stop. She bought a new car while we were paying for morphine. I bought snow tires and groceries, and you Venmo'd Mom once and screenshotted it. The shorter officer coughed softly into his fist. It wasn't a laugh, but the body has only so many ways to say, I see what this is. I felt the final card in my pocket and pulled it. I hadn't planned to use it tonight. I'd planned to use it in a room with 2 detectives and a court reporter, but sometimes revenge is timing, and sometimes it's mercy to yourself to finish the sentence you started. Since you like truth, I said, and turned my phone so the officers and the open door could hear. Here's one more. I pressed play on a clip marked with a date from 2 years earlier, when Mom was alive, when Leonard came by the house once a week to perform sunness and left with containers of soup. The audio was the tinny quality of a phone recording hidden on a bookshelf. You could hear the clink of a spoon and the lilt of Mom's voice, soft and patient, even when she'd earned the right to be brittle. Leonard, she said in the recording, you can't take cash from the medical envelope. We have to pay the visiting nurse. It's my money, too. I'm the one keeping the roof. You are not the one, Mom said, and there was the steel I inherited. Put it back. The clip ended with the sound of bills being pushed across for Micah and a chair scraping back hard. I'd forgotten the chair sound until tonight, and hearing it again tightened my throat. I looked at the chair behind Leonard's dining table. Different wood, same scrape. The room changed temperature, not just because of the recording, but because a dead woman had just spoken, and she'd chosen a side. Leonard's mouth opened and closed. He found a pebble-sized smile. Convenient edit, he said. Full files 2 minutes. This is just the part you needed to hear. He glanced toward the kitchen where a family calendar used to hang with sticky notes and grocery lists when he was married to a woman who left before I did. He looked suddenly smaller. Jonah stepped back, like the floor had tilted under him. I didn't sign up for Mom. I signed up for cash. You signed up for crimes, I said. Outside, a 4th porch light clicked on. A door opened, and someone who mattered in this subdivision walked out. The HOA president, a woman with elegant hands and a memory for bylaws. She stood with Mrs. Hahn and Mr. Reed and looked directly into the house like it was a fish tank. Do we need a wellness check? She asked the officers. We're handling it, the taller one said, but not dismissively. He sounded like a man who had just decided which box to tick on a form. Cassie's shoulders lowered in surrender. She reached into her bag, took out her phone, and held it out to the shorter officer like a confession wafer. There are screenshots, she said, of the trust file from the law office and my messages with Leonard. I lead her. It hurt to do it. I'll put it in writing. You'll do more than that, I said, but I kept the acid out of my voice. She would be useful, or she would be gone. Tonight wasn't about rage. It was about rails. My lawyer's voice, still on the TV, returned with the return of a man who had been waiting for the right line to drop. Officers, I've emailed you a link to a secure folder with the original audio and video, plus timestamps and device IDs. You'll also find IP logs indicating failed access attempts to Miss Parker's trust at 2:14 and 2:16 a.m., tied to an address used by a Mr. Caleb Mayer. Employment records place him at a repair shop frequented by Mr. Jonah.
That shop closed 6 months ago, Jonah snapped. Don't you people keep up? The taller officer took a small notebook from his pocket and wrote, slow and neat. We keep up fine. It could have ended right there, with the humiliated and the documenting and the neighbors with their phones. But exposure has a final gear you have to click into if you want the lesson to stick beyond this cul-de-sac, beyond these polite clucks. I reached for it. I stepped onto the porch with my phone and spoke up, not shouting, just letting the words carry. If you heard my brother say he threatened me, that wasn't a misunderstanding. If you saw him try to take a bag that isn't his, that wasn't a mistake. If you read his posts this week about responsibility, remember his own mother had to ask him to put back cash meant for her nurse. I am filing for a protective order. If you hear anything about me that came from this house, assume it is a lie and send it to my attorney. A dog barked down the block. The HOA president nodded once, the kind of nod that means committee emails will be drafted tonight. Mrs. Hahn's eyes shone the way eyes do when someone is proud of you and doesn't want to embarrass you with it. I turned back inside and saw something I hadn't prepared for. Relief, quick and animal, flick across Leonard's face before shame chased it. Relief that someone else had taken the wheel. Relief that the spinning had stopped. He is still responsible for every text, every camera, every threat. But he is also a man who's been lying so hard he forgot what silence feels like. That wasn't mercy in me. It was data. Revenge needs clean notes. Ms. Parker, the taller officer said, do you need an escort to your car? I'm fine, I said. I have what I came for. Do you? Jonah nodded at the duffel. Because this looks like what you came for. Open it, I said. He looked at Leonard. Leonard looked at the officers. The officers looked at the bag. The bag looked back, silent as a dog that knows exactly which couch it chewed. Jonah unzipped it. The fake stacks stared up at him with their smug little presidents and crisp bank bands, all paper and no soul. He made a sound that might have been a laugh and might have been a dying battery. Play stupid games, I said. Win stupid prizes, the shorter officer finished, almost under his breath. I picked up the small phone I'd wedged behind his TV, slid it into my pocket, and headed for the door. Cassie took one breath like she was going to speak, and then didn't. Leonard didn't move. At the threshold, I paused and looked back once. Not because I was nostalgic, but because you should look at a thing the last time you see it from this angle. The family photo on the mantle, the one from a fall festival where we are all wearing scarves and smiles, looked like a postcard from a country I no longer live in. I stepped outside into the open night. Fresh air has a taste when you've been breathing other people's lies. It tastes like metal and mint. 3 steps down the walk, my phone buzzed again. The tile I'd sewn into the bag sent a ping. The little map dot jumped, then crawled. Someone had palmed the decoy while the room watched me leave. Of course they had. Habit is a heavy thing. I didn't turn around. I kept walking until I reached the street. And then I stopped under the neighbor's sycamore and watched the dot move across my screen, slow and purposeful, curving toward the exit of the subdivision. I saved a screenshot, sent it to my lawyer, and to the detective with a clean line. The bag is in motion, tracker active. Ms. Parker, the taller officer called from the porch. We'll be in touch tomorrow. I'll be ready, I said, without looking back. From the corner of my eye, I saw the HOA president tilt her head toward me, question there if I wanted it. I didn't. I wanted distance, and the clean ache you get after a tooth is pulled, pain that is on its way out. I got in my car, shut the door, and let the quiet settle around me like a coat. My hands were steady on the wheel. The bag's dot reached the main road and swung left. It took the turn toward the old industrial park. Of course it did. As the light turned green, the phone rang. Unknown number. I put it on speaker and eased forward. Al. The voice was thin with anger and something else. Panic or pride or both. Leonard. Come back. We can fix this. I can hire a lawyer. That's the only fix left.
You think people will still like you when they find out you hid $50 million when I asked my family for $600? That sentence tells its own story. Good night, Leonard. I hung up before he could throw another word across the gap. The map dot pulsed at the edge of the industrial park. Then it stopped. Unit numbers like teeth lined the lanes in my mind, even before I turned onto the road that would take me there tomorrow with a detective and a key. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown email address. A photo of a manila folder on someone's lap. The caption said, "Let's barter." The sender was listed as a.del, familyfirst.email.com. My breath hitched. Aunt Del. Not a bystander. Not a sermonizer. An accomplice. The streetlight bled a pale halo onto my windshield. I stared at the screen and felt a clean, bright anger climbing my spine. An anger that has room for precision. I took a screenshot. Then I typed one message to Detective Lewis. New player. Aunt Del. Likely coordinating documents. I'll forward. The dot blinked again in the storage rows, and a second dot appeared, briefly, then vanished, like another tracker waking up and dying. Not mine. Someone else was tracking my decoy. That wasn't Leonard's style. That wasn't Jonah's either.
The map steadied. The night pressed in. The engine hummed. I pulled away from the curb and the cliffhanger followed me home in the passenger seat. Aunt Del's email burning on my phone. The storage unit door waiting, and somewhere, someone I hadn't seen yet, watching a tracker I hadn't planted. I sat in my car with the heater on low and the world outside smelling like wet tar. The map dot blinked stubbornly at the edge of the industrial park. Aunt Del's email glowed like a chalice I didn't want to drink from. A photo of a manila folder, the subject line trying to sound pious, family first, and a caption, "Let's barter." It was the worst kind of intimacy, someone who knows the names of your dead and uses them as currency. Detective Lewis called me 5 minutes later. "We have a warrant for Unit 17B at 8 a.m. I'm bringing 2 officers and a public safety tech. Keep your phone charged and keep your distance until we clear it." Her voice was business and bone. "Also, don't go in there alone under any circumstances." I said I understood and then stared at my own hands. "Don't go alone." I typed it on a napkin in my head until it felt like a rule. Then I called David and arranged to meet him at the PD at 7:30. Legal daylight, official teeth. All of my plans had to be on paper and within reach. I didn't sleep. I walked the house like someone rehearsing lines. I pulled Mom's prayer book from the top shelf and held it like a cool thing in a hot hand. The ledger with the torn corner, where I had taped a fake envelope the night Jonah came, wasn't on the mantel. The photo someone had sent the night before, the cookbook spread in a stranger's hand, was now a live question mark. People move things when they think they can get away with it, but they also leave fingerprints on paper and footprints in storage aisles. At 6:45 a.m., David arrived, tie loose, eyes too awake for the hour. We met in a fluorescent corridor behind the department, papers and coffee and a sense of ritual. "You ready?" he asked. "As I'll ever be," I said. He looked at the folder of evidence and then at me. "If Aunt Del is involved, you'll want to consider the motive. People don't risk prison for sentiment. They do it for ledger lines." He meant money. I meant more. For her to be in it meant family sermons could be a ledger entry too. I folded my hands and felt the smoothness of my phone where I'd cached every thread, every message, every red flag. The raid was quick and clinical. We drove past the storage gates and the lone guard's booth, past the rusted vending machine and the cat who owned the alley, and then to 17B. Detective Lewis read the warrant out loud like a benediction, the kind the legal system gives to itself. The lock came off with a clunk that sounded like a heart opening the wrong door. Inside was not the glitter of stolen goods, but the sloppy altar of greedy people who thought secrecy was sacred. Plastic bins with receipts. A rolling suitcase with clothing that smelled like cigarette smoke. The duffel sat in the back corner, unguarded, looking ridiculous with its banded faux hundreds. I felt relief like a tide. It's a strange pleasure finding the thing you've been hunting and discovering it's only a decoy. It proves you are right and teaches you that people always expect the easy win. Detective Lewis's tech guy swore softly when he found the tile. Active tracker. Someone's been following it since last night. He thumbed at his tablet. It pinged from several phones overnight, 2 of them tied to numbers registered to the Dell House residence. He paused, and I saw the small slowing that means the story is widening. Aunt Dell had hands on more than sermons. She had silicone fingerprints on things I'd thought private. I felt the old small part of me, patient and stunned, let go like a balloon. They unzipped the duffel. The fake cash sat like a dishonest smile. Underneath, tucked in a Ziploc, was a small pile of slips, notes, receipts, a photo of Mom's hospice band. There was a Post-it scribbled with a list of names and amounts. My eyes snagged on one line, Allison, test, and next to it, 50 million, confirm. Someone had literally written confirmation on paper, as if paper could sanctify conspiracy. "This is a ledger," David said low. "We'll chain this into an extortion ring." He looked at me like he wanted to remind me that law makes monsters visible. They took fingerprints, cataloged every scrap, shot photos and stuffed items into bags like a slow, reverent robbery back in reverse. The tech guy found the origin points for the tile dots. Not just phones, but a cheap burner with metadata that threaded back to a store where Aunt Dell shopped for church raffle tickets. Convenience and sin wear the same shoe. "We'll want to talk to her today," Detective Lewis said. "We'll get a warrant to search her phone and email." She looked at me. "We'll need you to identify documents, anything you want seized." The manila folder from Aunt Dell's photo sat on a table under a light like an accusation. I didn't touch it. My hands itched, but I kept them calm. Touch can be an admission. I kept proper distance. When they served Aunt Dell at her home, she answered the door with hair brushed and a face that said, "I know I did nothing." She had that kind of theatrical innocence people buy at the pharmacy. She let them in like a church usher letting in a choir. "Mrs. Delhouse, we have a warrant," Detective Lewis said. She blinked, and then the blink broke. "For what?" She folded her hands the way someone folds hands when they're about to play a role. Her calm fell away, and the second it takes to see the claws under a manicure. "At home," Lewis said. "We're looking for documents related to extortion and any devices used to coordinate unauthorized access to a third party's trust. Please step aside."
She smiled like a woman thinking she's still the protagonist. That smile would not last past the phone search. Phones tell the truth. People tell fairy tales. They found messages stacked like secret receipts, photos, a list of names, texts to Leonard with times and suggested drops, a scanned copy of Mom's hospice bill, annotated in Aunt Dell's chicken scratch with initials and a cashier's number. It read like an altar list, not a mother's help. "Did you coordinate with Mr. Meyer?" Lewis asked, holding up a phone with a thread of messages. "Who is Caleb?" Aunt Dell's jaw worked. "Caleb helps with my yard. He knows phones. She leaned back toward me, and for a second, she looked like a woman who'd taught Sunday school for 30 years and now had to explain the price of betrayal in a public forum. "I was trying to help, Allison. Please understand." I thought about walking away. I thought about the scalding kindness Aunt Dell used to press like a napkin on my cheek at funerals. But understanding isn't the same as absolution. I felt the ledger again. The Post-it with "confirm" scrawled beside my name, and a small white-hot thing clicked into place. "How long?" I asked. "How long have you been doing this?" Her eyes found me and then dropped. "A while. Your brother got scared when creditors started calling. We thought if we nudged, if we convinced you to give a little, that would solve things." "Solve things?" My voice was gentle until it wasn't. "So you pawned my privacy to fix a ledger?" She wrung her hands like someone trying to wring guilt into soap. "We thought we were protecting the family." "No," I said. "You were protecting your bank accounts." She looked at Leonard's text thread and then away. The script of her life was bribe plus prayer plus a little white lie. I'd always known some versions of faith are habit and some are currency. They read her rights. They took her phone. She sat at her kitchen table like someone who'd been unmasked mid-sermon. The neighbors watched through curtains. It had the exact theater I'd wanted and never wanted. I felt hollowed and vindicated at once. Returning to my car, the detective said, "We'll want you to come down, Miss Parker. There's more tying up and statements to take." I agreed, because what follows exposure is paperwork and a slow science of justice. We were far from the end game, but the map had a new knot. Aunt Dell. Hands in the ledger. The mid-story twist I hadn't expected, but should have. My aunt, who used to braid my hair when I was small, had been rearranging our family like it was church money. At the station, I sat in a small glass paint interview room and watched as the case unfolded across a screen. Threads revealed threads. The IP addresses, the burner purchases, timestamps of the photo Aunt Dell sent the night before that put my ledger on public display. A second burner pinged the tile in the duffel an hour after I'd left Leonard's house, then disappeared. Somebody else had been watching the tracker, someone who knew the storage unit address and was moving my decoy for reasons that weren't Leonard's. "Who else knows?" I asked. Detective Lewis tapped a folder of prints and photos. "We have 2 unregistered numbers associated with your tracker movement. One routes to a number registered recently through a mail drop in Akron. The other came from outside the state." She gave me a look I'd seen before. "Trouble's not just next door. It's a ring that widens when you poke at it." A commercial voicemail landed on my phone, and it was like being slapped awake. A number I didn't know. A plain voice with no inflection. "We have the ledger. Call us if you want to bargain." No signature, no mercy. Just a line. I forwarded it to David. He frowned. "You're in the crosshairs of someone more organized than a couple of greedy relatives. That changes the game." He tapped his pen on the file. "You wanted revenge. It's getting you a prosecution. But be careful. Sometimes when people start naming players, the players try to bury names with violence." He said the word like it was a weather warning. My mouth went dry, but my hands didn't shake. Maybe because I was done being someone who only reacts. Maybe because the ledger fist felt heavy and finally mine to throw. We left the station with more warrants filed than I could count in my head. The DA would want to prosecute extortion, unauthorized access, conspiracy, civil suits would follow, media requests would land like flies. I thought about the moral I'd been saving like an emergency exit. Secrets have teeth, and when you bite back, the bite is public. That evening, back at home, I opened my email and breathed in the small crowd of messages. A press inquiry I ignored, a text from Cassie saying she'd gone to the law office to confess in person and had left a note under the admin's door, David's message that the judge signed a freeze on any accounts associated with the transfers they'd traced, and then at the bottom, a picture message from an unknown number. It was a picture of the recipe ledger, but this one had a corner turned back, revealing scribbles in a different hand. Someone had written, "You can keep playing. We'll keep moving pieces. Your next step will hurt." No signature, no number, just a threat that sounded like sympathy. The war had metastasized beyond the family tantrum. It had teeth that searched the map for weak places.
I set the phone down and looked at the mantel where Mom's photograph used to stand. The space felt like an open wound and also like a window. The ledger was missing. The fake duffel had been exposed and tracked. Aunt Dell was implicated. Leonard and Jonah had mouths full of confessions on tape. The puzzle was rounding into place, but a piece I hadn't expected. Someone watching the tracker, someone with the means to move the bag and whisper to me from an unknown number, was still unaccounted for. I let myself feel something I hadn't given permission to. Fear. Not terror. Practical fear. The kind that sharpens rather than fractures.
It told me one vital thing. My family had not been the only enemies. Someone else was profiting from our ruin. I thought of Mom's steady hands, of the warm tea I'd make when I was too tired to be brave. I thought of the line I'd written to the family chat. "You've failed the test." The test had been a scalpel. It had cut and bled, and the blood had made other animals come sniffing. Revenge, I realized, is a fossil you dig from the ground. Pull too hard, and it shatters. Pull with patience, and you uncover whole veins. I wanted veins, not shards. I sat down and started making a new list. This one was surgical. Find the source of the burner that pinged the tracker last night. David. Subpoena Aunt Dell's bank records. Detective Lewis. Publicly file extortion and conspiracy charges to get the media narrative aligned to facts before lies spread. David. Quietly meet with the law office admin and demand a written account of chain of custody for my trust documents. Me. Set a controlled decoy, but this time with 2 trackers and a live team watching. No single tracker to be moved without the other lighting the map. Me plus PD tech. Locate the origin of the anonymous voicemail and the photo threat. Detective Tex. I added one more, soft and cruel. Let Leonard and Aunt Dell keep talking to each other in a cooler full of regret. People betray themselves when they think the game is won. As I checked off each line in my head, my phone buzzed. Cassie. I showed up at the law office. The admin is an intern. She said she forwarded things because she thought you were being taken advantage of. I thought it would help. I typed back. Get me the intern's name. Full statement. Now. Then I texted a different message to the family group chat, but this time it was shorter and colder. I want the recipe ledger returned intact. No one is to contact me directly. Everything through counsel. I hit send and felt the clean click of a lock. Night settled over the neighborhood like a verdict. I stood on my porch and watched my street breathe. Somewhere beyond the cul-de-sac, the storage unit's dot flickered, then went dark. The person who'd been moving my fake cash understood 2 things very well: distance and shadows. The family test had flushed out greed. The storage sting had flushed out a broker. Now the board had a new piece, someone outside the family pulling threads like a puppeteer who doesn't need applause. Lewis called near dusk. She said, "We've got enough for arrests on Leonard and Jonah, and we've seized Delhouse's phone, but I want the outsider." We set another decoy, dual trackers, live surveillance, bait that looks real enough to taste. You up for one more performance? I said, I have one left in me. We built it together. The new duffel was uglier and heavier, an insult to anyone who planned on lifting it and running. Inside, stacks of prop cash mixed with a few marked bills, 2 trackers stitched into different seams, a 3rd tracker the size of a pill glued into the banding, and a whisper-thin RF tag that would ping the PD's van, even if someone tried to Faraday bag the bag. On the outside, a single note in my handwriting. If you want it, follow instructions this time. Instructions broadcast by me through a fresh burner, a time, a place, and the oldest stage in town, an abandoned warehouse across from the old rail spur, with light enough to see and space enough to contain pride. We seated the place with eyes, a dash cam mounted on an idling sedan, 2 body cams on plainclothes detectives tucked behind pillars, a neighbor's 2nd-story window 4 buildings over, where Mrs. Hand's nephew agreed to pretend he was fixing blinds while holding a camcorder steady. David insisted I wear a panic button on a thin chain, the same color as my hoodie cord. They wanted me to come alone. I did not. I came visible. I texted Leonard from the burner an hour before the meet. You have one chance to do something human. Don't show up. His reply was the kind of thing bullies send when they're already out of breath. "You'll regret this." Jonah didn't reply at all. Aunt Dell sent a prayer hands emoji. My stomach lurched. I turned off previews and put the phone screen down on the passenger seat. Night opens differently in the industrial part of town. The air is colder, the shadows sharper. When I stepped out of my car, gravel chewed under my soles, and the train beyond the tracks moaned like a sad animal learning a scale. I set the duffel on the concrete, where the light from the pole turned the ground the color of chalk, and waited, with my hands visible and my breath slow on purpose. He came from the east, not the west like I expected. Mid-30s, jeans, a puffer jacket, a baseball cap with no team on it, every detail noise-canceled. He stopped just outside the light, and when he finally spoke, I realized I'd heard the cadence before. The flat, unemotional voice from the voicemail about the ledger, the one that sounded like a customer service rep for threats. "You're early," he said. "I hate being late," I said. He glanced once at my hands, once at the duffel, once at the darkness beyond me. "Bag," I countered. He smiled without teeth. "Names are for people who plan to stay. Then say who you work for." "People who fix problems," he said, which is always a good way to describe people who cause them. I didn't reach for the bag. "I'm not your family," I said, "so why do you care if a woman in Franklin hides a win?" "Because loose money makes loose talk. Loose talk makes investigations end badly for people with more to lose than you." His eyes were wrong for a debt collector. They weren't hungry. They were bored. "Where did you meet my aunt?" I asked. "Church," he said, without irony. "Everyone meets everyone at church, if they're useful." The panic button under my hoodie cord felt like a cool bead. I thought about pressing it and ending the theater early, but I needed one more piece. "What happens after you take the bag?" I asked. "Do you tell my family to go quiet, or do you sell them to the next bidder the second they stop being profitable?" "They already sold themselves," he said. And for the first time, he sounded alive. "You did the rest." He took a step into the light. His face was forgettable. His shoes were not. Work boots with a fresh sole that said he moved more than papers. He reached for the duffel. "Wait," I said. And he actually did. It made me angry, that reflex. He'd been told to expect compliance, and I had so much more than compliance. "I want to hear you say why you tried to get me to bring cash to the skating rink lot last week, why Jonah put a camera in my stove, why my aunt sent me my trust file." "You were sloppy. They were eager. We connected the dots and encouraged them to keep drawing." He didn't care that he was confessing. He didn't care about anything but the transaction. It made my next choice easy. I pressed the panic button. The detectives moved like they had been invented for this moment. 2 from behind a pillar, 1 from the far door, 1 stepping out of a sedan like a ghost repainted flesh. Red and blue splashed the brick. The man didn't run. He put his hands up slowly, eyes on me. "Hands where I can see them," a detective called. "You're making a mistake," he said. "Not to them, to me." "Get used to it," I said. They cuffed him. He didn't look surprised. He didn't look anything. While they read his rights, he stared at the duffel like it was an old friend he'd outgrown. "Name?" Lewis asked, flipping his wallet open with gloved fingers. The license said one thing, the badge another. He was neither. The card tucked behind the license said Meyer, Caleb, and I almost laughed because it was too neat. The repair shop kid who knew phones had leveled up and been hired by someone who used church halls as job fairs. He didn't flinch when Lewis said the name out loud. "Mr. Meyer, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit extortion, trespass, wire fraud, and anything else the DA likes when she sees this bag." He watched me. "You think they're the problem?" he said casually, tipping his chin toward the direction of my family, like he could see them through the bricks. "You haven't met my boss. And now I won't have to. You'll introduce us." He laughed. "You can't afford it." I stepped closer so he had to look at me and not through me. "I can afford a lot of things now, but I can't afford to keep people like you in my life." I let the sentence hang, a boundary dressed as politeness. I've learned that's the sharpest kind. They put him in the back of the car and took his calm with them. The warehouse felt bigger without his boredom sucking all the oxygen to one side. Louis waved a tech hover to sweep my bag and the concrete for prints, then turned to me with a look that had satisfaction folded into caution. "Good, clean, thank you," she said. "Go home. We'll pick up Leonard and Jonah tonight. Dell House tomorrow at 9. We'll turn Meyer and see who else he names." "Will Cassie be charged?" I asked. "Not if she keeps cooperating. The story she gave matches the digital trail. We'll use her. Then she gets to go home and live with herself, which is sometimes the heavier sentence." The news didn't make me happy, but it made sense. Punishment without purpose is just hunger. I wanted shape, not appetite. On the way home, my phone filled like a jar under a faucet. A copy of the arrest report, David's message that he'd filed civil claims for invasion of privacy and intentional infliction of emotional distress, a screenshot of Leonard's neighborhood @post that had vanished between last night and now, replaced with a photo of 2 cruisers outside his house and a tidy caption: "Please avoid street for the next hour while officers do their jobs." A neighbor had attached a recipe for snickerdoodles in the comments. Ohio.
When I pulled into my driveway, a shape peeled off my porch. Cassie. She had her palms up and her eyes already raw. I didn't unlock the screen door. "Say it from there," I said. "I told them everything," she said. "The intern's name, the way the admin looked away when I pulled the file, the texts with Leonard, the times I forwarded him your messages. I told them I was wrong, and I was. I was jealous and self-righteous and scared, and I thought if I did a bad thing for a good reason, it would add up to 0. That is not how math or people work." Wind pushed a leaf against the step and left it there like punctuation. I watched her struggle for a shape her mouth could make that wasn't defense. She found one I recognized: grief. "I liked being the friend you told everything," she said. "Then you didn't. I took that personally and decided to turn it into proof that you were cruel instead of private. That's on me. If I could pay bail with humiliation, I'd have posted yours for years." Her apology bled, which is the only kind that costs anything. I cracked the door an inch. "You're going to testify," I said. "You're going to help Louis draw a map from the law office to my brother's front step to the warehouse. Then you're going to give me 6 months of your silence." She nodded, like a student who wanted extra credit. "Done." "And then maybe we eat pancakes," I said. "But they'll be awkward pancakes." She choked on a laugh. I deserve weird pancakes. We didn't hug. We left with the kind of nod you give a person getting on a different bus than yours. That night, the arrests happened in sequence like a metronome. 8:03 p.m., Jonah in a flannel shirt at a friend's couch, eyes stunned wide for the camera. 8:37 p.m., Leonard on his porch in a sweatshirt with the college he never finished printed across the chest, jaw tight for the spiteful dignity of it. 9:14 p.m., Aunt Dell at her kitchen table with a Bible open in front of her, like a prop that had decided to testify. I didn't go watch. The videos would exist without me. I made tea and put Mom's throw over my knees and let my breath loosen in increments, like I was practicing a song with tricky bars. The outsider did one more thing before morning. From the holding cell, Meyer called someone, and the call was recorded because the universe occasionally plays fair. He said a name, not a boss, of a business, Common Ledger Solutions, an innocuous bookkeeping service with an address above a pawn shop, a website made from a template, and a list of community partners that looked like a who's who of places where people's privacy gets sold by the ounce. They hadn't just skimmed my life, they built a sluice. Aunt Dell hadn't discovered a fixer. She'd walked into a storefront that exists to monetize shame. Louis got a warrant by lunch. The office was empty by the time PD and the state AG cracked the door. Desktop monitors still warm, a corkboard with string pulled down so fast one tack still wobbled. In the back, a portable drive, stitched with names I recognized from town and names I didn't. People whose bad days had been harvested and sold to relatives with grudges and collectors with quotas.
It took me a long, tight breath to not blame myself for a system that was always going to exist with or without me. David called from the courthouse steps. "We'll be on the right side of this headline. But understand, there will be a headline." "I know. Let it say what it needs to say." In the days that followed, the public part of my revenge unfolded the way storms do. Noisy at first, then a long drizzle of forms and signatures. Leonard was arraigned for attempted extortion and conspiracy. Jonah for trespass, unlawful surveillance and conspiracy. Delhouse for conspiracy and unauthorized access to protected information. Meyer for the whole grocery list, plus whatever the AG liked from the server room. The DA stacked charges like cordwood. Pleas would be negotiated, some would go to trial. The outcomes would be measured in months and fines, and a permanent kind of smallness. People asked me why I didn't just move away. Because moving away is a story after you finish the one you're in. Because you should get to keep the streets where you carried soup to a mother who said your name soft, even when she was in pain. Because leaving is not the same as healing. I kept going to work. I wrote the care notes for my residents with good pens. I replaced the stove light and left the old camera in a sealed bag labeled Evidence on a shelf where I could see it when I needed to remember what I'd survived. I set up a scholarship in Mom's name at the assisted living center. Not for college, she would have left at the word, but for car repairs and rent gaps and the kinds of little cliffs people fall from when greed in their family is louder than love. I told David to make the applications anonymous and to let the recipients be private if they wanted. Not every good thing needs applause. Neighbors shifted from curiosity to kindness. Mrs. Hahn left muffins and pretended not to watch for me to open the door. Mr. Reed fixed my mailbox and pretended it had always leaned that way. The HOA president sent a mass email about personal conflicts spilling into shared spaces, and then called me from her office line to ask if I wanted company at the next meeting. I told her I'll show up and clap for the person arguing about fence heights. Normalcy is my favorite miracle. Leonard wrote a letter from county a weekend, not to apologize, to explain. It was full of the kind of words people use when they want forgiveness without naming the thing they did. I read it standing up. Then I put it in a folder marked legal and did not make it be a story. He will have consequences and a future he has to carry. That's not my chore list anymore.
Cassie kept her promise. She sat in a conference room with a recorder between us and read her statement slowly, swallowing hard over the parts where she let someone swap love for access. When she finished, she looked at me like she was asking to pass a plate. "Can we do the pancake thing in 6 months?" she asked. "Awkward is fine. I'm good at awkward." "We'll burn them," I said, on purpose. The late twist, the one I didn't see coming because I thought I was done being surprised, arrived in an envelope from my lawyer with a sticky note. "Thought you should have this." It was a copy of a handwritten letter Mom had left with the attorney when she signed her final documents, the ones we'd never opened because grief is a bad secretary. The letter wasn't long. "Al, if you ever come into money, keep it quiet until you know who loves you out of habit, not appetite. Then be generous with your privacy first. Money makes people tell on themselves. Let them. Love you, baby. Mom." I sat at my kitchen table and let myself ugly cry once, not because I needed permission to be angry anymore, but because I'd finally run out of reasons to keep the tenderness damned. I won't pretend revenge turned me into a saint. It didn't. It turned me into a builder. I built boundaries and affidavits and new routines. I stopped answering phone calls that started with, "We're family." I started answering the ones that said, "Is this a good time?" I learned to fold my days around what I choose instead of what I'm dared into. When the first court date arrived, the hallway outside the courtroom smelled like bad coffee and small nerves. I wore black because it made me feel neat. The DA nodded. David squeezed my shoulder. Leonard didn't look at me. Jonah did, and then looked down. Aunt Dell tried to look maternal and instead looked like a woman reading a hymn she didn't believe.
The judge granted the permanent protective order without ceremony. The charges were read, pleas were entered. Journalists wrote down my name and the city and that number everyone loves, 50 million, like it explained anything. It does explain some things: greed, panic, bad planning. It doesn't explain watching your mother sleep in a chair. It doesn't explain why a cousin you shared Kool-Aid with once would solder a camera into your life. It doesn't explain why a stranger builds a business around people's worst days. Money is not a motive, it's a microphone. The voice is already there. I walked out of the courthouse into a bright afternoon that felt like the city had been scrubbed. A woman holding a reporter's notebook asked if I wanted to say anything to the community. I said, "Lock your doors and your heart, but don't let either turn you into a room no one can live in." She blinked, not sure where to put that, and I kept walking. That night, I made a bowl of noodles and ate them on the floor because the couch felt too ceremonial. I turned off all the lights except the lamp that used to hide a camera because I like to rewrite symbols until they work for me. And when the room got quiet enough to hear my own thoughts, I realized something I wish I'd known earlier. Revenge is not about finishing them. It's about finishing the part of you that thinks you have to stand there while they work you like a problem. I had asked my family for help because I wanted to know who truly loved me. They answered. I believed them. And then I told the truth louder than they lied. I'm not a saint. I'm a woman with a ledger of my own now. Names I call when I need help. Names I hand to a detective. Names I say in prayers that don't sound like church. That ledger is private. It's also worth more than any windfall a cashier can scan. 3 weeks after the last hearing, I drove to the river with a thermos of cocoa and a paperback and sat on the hood of my car like a teenager who didn't have a future gnawing at her. The water moved the way water always does, stubborn and unbothered by local drama. I scattered a little of Mom's favorite tea into it and watched the steam rise off the surface like it had something to say. Maybe it did. Maybe it said, "You did enough." I went home and slept without counting minutes. If there's a moral, it's not tidy. Money didn't change me, it changed the volume on other people's appetites. Tests don't create truth, they reveal it. And love that needs proof arrives empty-handed and leaves with more than it came for. If there's a warning, it's simple. Lock your doors, check your light fixtures, follow the map, document everything, never confuse a sermon with a contract. If there's a hope, it's this. After the sirens and the screenshots and the court dates, after the neighbors stop pretending their dogs need 3 extra walks, you still get to decide how a day tastes in your mouth. Mine tastes like blueberries and mint and a little bit of metal, and that's fine. It tastes like a life that belongs to me again. Did you like my story? What would you have done in my place? And which city are you listening from? Don't forget to like, subscribe to my channel for more stories.